My name is Guru Singh, and I was in the Yogi Bhajan cult for about 30 years. Now this is a picture of me with Yogi Bhajan and a group of people. This is me over here on the right, and this is Yogi Bhajan here. And this was a picture of me back in the 1980s. So I'm going to talk a little bit about today my experiences and also why the Yogi Bhajan 3HO cult is such a dangerous cult even today. Okay. Now this shows some articles that have come out recently which show how Yogi Bhajan abused his position for power, money, and sex. This was an article that was in the Eugene Register Guard in May 9th, 2010, and talks about how some of his secretaries and people close to him sued him for rape and other abuses. Now this was the book that I wrote, which I will be reading from today as well. It's Confessions of an American Sikh. And for anybody who would like a copy, if you just email me, I'll send you a copy of the book as a PDF. It's also available on Amazon for only 99 cents. It's the cheapest that Amazon will allow me to sell it for. It talks about all my experiences within the Yogi Bhajan cult. And again, talks about why this 3HO is still a dangerous cult. Now I want to show you here some examples of why I say this is still a dangerous cult. Yogi Bhajan taught his own form of Kundalini Yoga, which he basically made up. It's been shown now through an academic study that was done by Philip Gillespie just recently, that Yogi Bhajan made up most of the exercises of the Kundalini Yoga. And my experience is that Yogi Bhajan designed this yoga specifically so that people would be more susceptible for being induced and inducted into his Yogi Bhajan cult. Now, what he taught were these exercises that used the breath of fire, which is very heavy exercise and breathing. He would combine it with some gong meditations, which would really get you very spaced out. And he would have us go for hours and hours holding our arms up and really getting completely exhausted. So when we would do these layouts, as he would call them, in corpse pose, he'd called it that, we would be more susceptible. He would be talking about in a very hypnotic voice, and we'd be more susceptible for being induced into his cult. Now, the 3HO people now today still do these same exercises and use Yogi Bhajan's voice in the background from a tape, and they still try to do this where they're inducting people into their cult. And if you talk to the people in 3HO who are very hardcore YBers, as I call them, Bhajan supporters, you'll see that they are not open at all to any criticism of Yogi Bhajan, and they're completely insulated in there. They're very defensive against any criticism. They've attacked me on the internet with ad hominem attacks, and they refuse to listen to any kind of criticism or any kind of constructive criticism about their practices and about what Yogi Bhajan did. There's also a forum that I would recommend to anybody who would like to know about more of the abuses Yogi Bhajan did and this Kundalini Yoga. It's that he taught. It's called Wacko World of Yogi Bhajan. I highly recommend it to anybody who would like to know more about it. Now, one of the other things Yogi Bhajan did, which again shows it's a cult, and again the 3HO people still practice today, is this worship of Yogi Bhajan. You can see here in this photograph where Yogi Bhajan's picture is here, and they're meditating. He told us, Yogi Bhajan told us to meditate on his picture. And I want to play a little clip from a lecture that I recorded, and this was back in the early part of when Yogi Bhajan was here in the United States, around 1970s or so. Just listen to what he said.
But if you look into my eyes in that portrait and project beyond that eye, Guru Yoga you do, in 2 minutes you will be where I'm not. Because I am a baby. I am a humble instrument. I do what you have to do. So my qualification is that of a little matchstick. I light the fire and you become all light. That truth you have to understand. That is all. Everybody has to live to the higher consciousness.
Okay, so there you have it. Yogi Bhajan himself says for people to meditate on his picture. And you can see how now the 3HO people still worship him. They have these altars. They have pictures of him over all the classes. This Garuka Singh here, he collected Yogi Bhajan's fingernails. It's really disgusting. Use them in a magic talisman. You can see the Yogi Bhajan people bowing. Here they bow at his death place here. And you can witness this if you visit there in Espanola, how, especially Yogi Bhajan died about 10 years ago now, and they'll be doing this type of worship and prostration before Yogi Bhajan's place. That was a deal where they were selling Yogi Bhajan's robes, much like the Catholics did in the Middle Ages, trying to raise money. So they think Yogi Bhajan's robes, his fingernails, his Garuka Singh, have some magical power to them. And this are all indications that this is still a very dangerous cult, and that these people are really engaged in cult worship of Yogi Bhajan. Yogi Bhajan lived a luxurious lifestyle, wearing jewelry and everything. This is about that lawsuit that this Premkar brought. And you can look this up on the internet. I'll put some links to it. This lawsuit is assault, abortion, sexual transmitted disease, torture, and imprisonment. And so I knew about these lawsuits back in the 80s, but Yogi Bhajan had us so hypnotized by his Kundalini Yoga that he would just say, "Oh, this woman's crazy," and so we just didn't listen to that. I was only in my 20s when I had met Yogi Bhajan, so I was particularly susceptible to Yogi Bhajan's corrupt practices. Later, I talked to the attorney who represented Premka in these lawsuits, and he told me that Yogi Bhajan refused to even come to the deposition. And so you think about it, and you see that Yogi Bhajan wanted to hide the truth. And so we need to get this out in the open and to let people know what this cult is really about. Now, these are some paintings that Yogi Bhajan had given me, and they show that he was into this power and money and sex. You can see here his signature down there, and it's clearly a phallic type of representation. I had an art gallery back there in the 80s, and Yogi Bhajan wanted me to sell these. And I still have the originals of these, actually. This one here is particularly telling. He writes power here. You can see here he writes power. And then he writes love over this clearly phallic symbol. He's got a little image of a woman there. Really, actually, when you look at it, it's pretty disgusting. And you can see where Yogi Bhajan's corruption came through in his artwork. They're like that. So let me read a little bit now from my book, and then it'll give you some ideas of some of my experiences through my book here. And I'll let you watch these pictures here while I'm reading through the book. Okay, we start here. These are the beginning chapters of my book, Confessions of an American Sikh. Yogi Bhajan hired me as one of his personal bodyguards. Yogi Bhajan, who was just called Yogiji, always had a white Mercedes driving in front of the car. He was in with another one behind. The other guards and I would ride in those, looking all serious while wearing our knee-length white flowing kurtas, loose white pants, and white turbans. We were always carrying concealed .44 Magnum caliber handguns, which were illegal, but only a misdemeanor in California. Those were heady days. Yogiji and his top-level cronies went out to lunch every day in Beverly Hills. I'm talking La Scala, places like that. White glove service. He would take the whole entourage, including all the bodyguards, and of course, his two right-hand men, both of whom Yogiji named Hari Jivan Singh and Hari Jivan Singh. No doubt because of their similar karmic destinies. The movie stars and executive bigwigs that ate at La Scala got used to seeing us coming, like a sea of white, like a roiling cloud, our white turbans with the golden emblems pinned at the centers. We would cluster around some big table, eating the gourmet fare, and making a big lively scene, looking so pompous and rich. Yogiji would drop $2 or $3 grand just on lunch, making a big show of it. That is the kind of lifestyle it was. This is from chapter 10. I received my spiritual name in the fall of 1979 after one of my typical spontaneous but life-altering decisions. My friend Sakrapal Singh was running across the ashram lawn with a suitcase. Hey Clark, want to go see Yogiji in Anchorage? I have an extra ticket. Every weekend Yogi Bhajan jetted to a different ashram to grace the people with his presence and give a tantric yoga course. In preparation, they would scrub every wall, every floor. They would paint the whole ashram, inside and out, and also cook and bake up every possible delicacy for him and his entourage. Devotees would spend weeks preparing for a visit, weeks full time. This was an addition to the 3.5-hour morning yoga sessions, and in many cases 12-hour workdays. I had always wanted to go to one of these things, so I got in the car with Sakrapal Singh and went just like that. I was wearing a t-shirt, jeans, and Birkenstocks. Pretty soon we were in Anchorage, and it was 40 below. Alaskans in the airport stared rudely, as if I had 3 heads or a giant growth on my nose. But this time it was not because of my turban, it was because of my clothes, or lack thereof. Sakrapal Singh had to find a taxi and make it drive right to the airport door. I ran straight into the vehicle. If I had been outside 5 minutes, I would have lost my toes to frostbite. But God protected me, and pretty soon I was in the warm ashram doing my obeisance to Yogiji. Typically what the ashram would do was set him up in a room ornamented with tassels, pillows, silken swags, and yards of fresh flower garlands. It would be anointed with scented oils and incense, fit for Krishna. Then the devotees would file in. With their fingertips they touched his feet, then their foreheads, to transmit his sacred darshan. Most folks had done it a bunch of times already. In fact, there were people that devoted every week and to following Yogiji around the country, just to sit at his feet all day, gazing on him or waiting on him. If he needed a glass of water, they would all scramble to be the one to bring it. I did not run in that circle, though. I had only met him once before and didn't even know if he would remember me. So when I got there, I was a little nervous. I've been told that outside of giving his lecture, Yogiji rarely spoke. He might grunt or someone once in a while, but mostly the great man ignored everyone. He would sit in his big chair, feet out for the supplications, talking on the phone in Punjabi. He was deeply involved in Indian politics, so it was always some critical thing. People said he was always yelling on the phone and gesturing wildly. Also, he would watch TV, soap operas, wildlife shows. People filled and knelt, bowed their foreheads to the ground, touched his feet, and heard, "This family of hyenas has driven a mother lion away from their kill." So imagine my surprise that day in Anchorage when after I did my obeisance, he spoke to me. "You're a skinny son of a bitch, you aren't you? When I was your age, I was 15. I ate 15 chapatis a day. You should eat 15 chapatis. Go get some meat on your bones." Envy bloomed in the breast of every ashramite within earshot. Encouraged, I handed Yogiji the slip of paper I had written on the plane, stashed it in a pocket. It asked the teacher for a spiritual name. That was how we communicated with him. Then we never addressed him directly. Sometimes he would respond, other times he would toss the paper aside. Depends upon what was on TV. He took my paper and asked my birthday, did some computations on the back, numerology. He wrote a name and handed it to me, Gursant Singh Khalsa. So, if we get cut off here in this video, please go to the link to the next video at the bottom of the description so you can hear the rest of the reading of these different chapters. Chapter 17. I moved from Eugene to LA with the intent of joining the Central 3HO ashram. Being closer to Yogaji and helping people with NLP, this is neuro-linguistic programming in LA, I was granted another audience with the great man, during which, like some eager fisherman, I told him about all the good I planned to do in the world. Yogi Bhajan shocked me by saying, a counselor, bah, you'll never make any money at that. Go work at GRD. He dismissed me. It was always about money with Yogi Ji. Soon I was out on the concrete in the piercing LA sunshine and head spinning. A pair of joggers huffed past in matching pastel outfits. Palm trees looked down on me like demigods. I looked at the slip of paper he had handed me before I left. It said Hari Jivan Singh and had a phone number on it. I went home and called it. Hari Jivan Singh ran the boiler room at GRD, or Guru Ramdas Enterprises. This guy was unbelievably rich. A Jewish guy, I mean. He was a converted Sikh like me, but damn if he wasn't a Jew. His voice, mannerisms, personality, all pure New York Jew, even though he was apparently from the Midwest. I met Hari Jivan Singh at GRD Enterprises, which was just a basement full of telephones and Sikhs, what they call a boiler room. Okay, this is from later in the book. This type of stuff didn't used to happen to me. This is talking about after I was arrested in India. You can read all about it here on false charges. And so I was reminiscing about how things had been in the past. This type of stuff didn't used to happen to me. I used to have powers. Where did they all go? I have been doing my exercises, my meditations, and yet that certain vibration is gone. I wonder if it was Bhajan's death, if somehow he took some of the magic out of the world when he left. There used to be a certain buzzing, a certain reverberation inside my city powers, our building. It felt like my blood was boiling. At one point, this power was so strong in me I couldn't control it. I mean, I wasn't even myself. I was obviously out of control. In the early days in Los Angeles, 3HO was its own little financial planet. As soon as I moved there from Eugene, I met this guy, Guru Sikh Shakti Singh, who asked me if I wanted to go into business with him. His business was selling baby palm trees on street corners. Why not, right? We had such charisma, Guru Sikh Shakti Singh and I. We would hit the streets right after morning sadhana, and man, our blood would be boiling. All those hours of chanting and flexing the spine, and our heads were just buzzing with spiritual fire. The washed-out, polluted workday people trudging along the street with their little dreams about bigger televisions and prettier wives, they were our customers. I would look into people's eyes and instantly have them. At $10 a pop, the trees went like hotcakes. People pictured their little tract homes surrounded with the beauty and majesty of Rodeo Drive. I later learned the cheap little trees would be dead in a week. This really illustrates how this Kundalini Yoga of Yogi Bhajan was like what I call this Kundalini Crack. And it was really addictive, I'll tell you. So that's the same yoga that these 3HO people are teaching today, and one of the reasons why I think it's so dangerous. Okay. The worst I ever saw Yogi Bhajan was when he was furious at me over a bad real estate deal. I thought he might kick me out of 3HO at the time. I really did. And it was so weird because Yogi Ji defined my ethics and my moral stance, all my beliefs in a way. He was my spiritual guide, but at the same time I was not prepared to let go of my own personality, my own morals, when I saw